Uh-huh. Welcome, everybody. I know I got to work on my musical transition. I think I did a lot better last week. This is the Voice of the Colts podcast. This is episode 9, and we have had quite a ride, quite a season. Today, we're going to talk about a few things. I mean, the first thing on the docket, am I really a Daniel Jones hater? The Colts lost 36 to 19. Almost flipped that around. 36 to 19. We will review predictions from last week's episode. Who was the closest? Who got the score the best or right or whatever? We'll get into that as well. And also, I've watched every throw from Riley Leonard's first almost full game of football. Didn't really start, but to stay tuned to figure out what I have to say about Riley Leonard and a lot of offseason decisions and a not any more too early time to discuss the offseason for the Indianapolis Colts. So we got a jam-packed episode today for you guys. And I am your host, Reef, the self-anointed voice of Colts Nation. And if you guys like Reef, you guys like the voice of the Colts right here, do me a solid. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, follow, share with your friends, leave a comment. And if you want to join the discussion about the Indianapolis Colts any given day, any given week, you go ahead and click that Discord link in the description. Join our Discord, join the conversation, and you too can be featured as a guest host on this show one of these weeks. We look forward to hearing from all the other voices of the Colts around the world. So, without further ado, we have to address some things. Because last week's episode, I had discussed some things about my takes on Daniel Jones. And not a lot of people really understood where I was coming from when I was really grilling Daniel Jones for after every loss, because that's just what I do as a fan when it comes down to it at the end of the day. If you only convert 10 first downs in a game or you go 3 for 10 from third down, there's no one on that field that I will ever blame more than the quarterback. At the end of the day, everything goes on the quarterback's shoulders, and I'll explain to you guys just a little bit why I feel that way and how I don't think I'm really a Daniel Jones hater, as so many fans have put it to me already. I've received that comment 100 times, especially over the last couple of weeks with the last few videos I've done where everyone in the world wanted to defend Daniel Jones after just about everything that happened. I mean, this is a complete collapse of the Colts season. And apparently, according to Colts fans, none of it falls on Daniel Jones, the quarterback's shoulders, which to me blows my mind. And what it comes down to is this is the job. As an NFL quarterback, wins and losses, that's the job. It's not throw the ball really far down the field. That's Jamarcus Russell. He can throw the ball 80 yards on his knees. Could he win a football game? Absolutely not. Couldn't even read a football defense. So it doesn't, the talent itself, and all Colts fans can understand this too, because they look at Anthony Richardson in this light. They don't care that AR can make some of the most spectacular plays you've ever seen. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't translate to wins, why does it matter? That's the quarterback's responsibility. It's a two-part thing because it's also the head coach. Head coach has to bear responsibility for the wins and losses as well as the quarterback. Those are the only two people on the field in which wins and losses are a stat for them. That's it. Everybody else, they have their individual stats. No one goes and like, oh, well, the Colts lost because Grover Stewart didn't get enough third down stops or short yardage stops. No one sits there and says, oh, well, the Colts lost because Josh Downs only had 3 catches. You know, that doesn't exist. I mean, you could say it, but you'd sound really stupid saying it. That's all it comes down to. You sound really foolish to put it all on a player that gets targeted 5 times, might touch the ball 3 times, and say, that guy's the reason we lost. No, you're going to look at the guy that touches the ball every single effing play. Like he has the ultimate influence. There is not a position in sports that has more influence than the quarterback position. And I know I'm starting this on sort of a weird note, considering we just played a football game and there's a lot to talk about and unpack from that football game. And I'll get into that later in the show. I feel it was pertinent for me to just at least explain why I go at the quarterback as hard as I do. And at the end of the day, you can sit there and you can tell me all day long, well, the offensive line has been a problem. And that's a comment I've received on so many clips that I posted about me talking about Daniel Jones. I get way too many comments saying, well, it's the offensive line's fault. It's the offensive line's fault. It's this. dude, we have had quarterbacks overcome offensive lines before. We have had, they're really, you can be totally right about this. I'm not disputing whether or not the offensive line did an amazing job or did an awful job. Because at the end of the day, I don't think it was either or. I think they were kind of smack dab in the middle for the better half of this second half of the season. Like, I don't see the world where the offensive line was so horrendous that you couldn't possibly blame the quarterback for a loss. Like, they weren't that bad. And even if they were really, really bad, right? Even if that was the case, at the end of the day, this is the job. It's not for everybody. You know, being a franchise quarterback, it ain't for everybody. And that's where I'm coming from when I talk about Daniel Jones. I'm not saying Daniel Jones isn't good enough to win any football games. I'm not saying Daniel Jones isn't good enough to maybe even make the playoffs every now and again. He's done it once with the New York Giants, even won a road playoff game. I believe it was a road playoff game for the Giants. I'm not saying that he can't possibly do any of those things. I'm saying it's not sustainable. He's not the franchise guy, and we're not in a position to where we should really be paying a guy, franchise guy money, who isn't the franchise guy. That's really all I was ever getting at, because if you ever go back and look at any of the clips or any of the previous 8 episodes, I always went back to, are we going to pay him $40 million a year? Are we going to pay him $45 million a year? Are we going to pay him $35 million a year? What's the number going to be? Because that was my concern. How much of the salary cap are we going to have to eat in order to keep a quarterback who clearly needs everything else on the field to be perfect for him to win football games? That was my issue. No matter how hard the job is, at the end of the day, I just want to know that we have a guy that can get it done. It's still the job. Doesn't matter if it's easy, doesn't matter if it's hard. And the Colts have done a pretty damn good job of building a roster to make the job pretty effing easy. Now, we've had times where the job was pretty hard, and clearly Daniel Jones did not step up to the plate and make it easy and get us a win. He just didn't do that. He just didn't do that. That's all it really comes down to. Is it a fair assessment? Maybe not. Maybe it's not a fair assessment. But since when was the quarterback position something we judged entirely fairly? There's 11 men on the offense, yet the credit always goes to the quarterback when they win. But so does the blame. And so does all the money. And that's where it comes from. Listen, at the end of the day, you get judged by your wins and losses as a quarterback. Doesn't matter how good you play. It matters, did your team make the playoffs? Did you guys win a lot of football games? Were you competitive at least in these football games? Those are the things that you think about when you talk about how good a quarterback is and whether or not they're going to be the guy going forward. How many games did you win? And at the end of the day, Daniel Jones, throughout the losses, throughout the last 5 weeks or so, has not looked good, and it shows on our record. We are now 1-4 in our last 5 games. Granted, he got injured in this 5th game, so don't want to put too much on him, obviously, for that. But that's the reality of the Colts season. We have flushed away our chances at winning the AFC South title. We are clinging on to dear life for a wild card spot, with now Riley Leonard being our quarterback, and we'll get more into him later. Here's why I always found it odd that the Colts fans attacked me for my take on Daniel Jones. Now, I want to reference a game that I referenced a couple weeks back after the Steelers game. I referenced Peyton Manning throwing 6 interceptions to the Chargers. And I bring this up to say, quarterbacks are allowed to have bad games. They do. They get bad games. Do I think you should just cut the cord on them every time they have a bad game? No, I don't think so. Here's the difference. I kind of went a little nerdy with this, and I made up a little transaction, a rate, a little exchange rate, if you will. So how many games, for me, I had to answer a simple question. Reef, how many games bad games, would you be okay with for a guy like Peyton Manning? And I thought about the exchange rate. And I came up with the idea that, well, for every really bad football game that you got from Peyton Manning, you probably got close to 30 great football games from him. Then I thought about Andrew Luck. And I said, all right, for every really bad football game you had from Andrew Luck, and trust me, there was plenty, you got about 15 to 20 really good games from Andrew Luck, right? Then I look at Daniel Jones, and I think Daniel Jones feels like a 5-to-1 kind of guy. For every bad game we get about 5 good ones. That's a decent rate. It's just not sustainable over a long period. And obviously, it's not like we're going to go 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, maybe 4 bad games in a row, and then we get like 10 good games in a row, whatever it is. I just don't think it's sustainable. I don't like it. It's not a good feeling. It's not a guy that I want to have on my team. And I even might be overselling Daniel Jones a little more. His rate might go lower. It might be 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. To be honest with you, it's actually closer to 2-to-1, 3-to-1, if I'm being honest. I rounded up the numbers to make them even. So yeah, I'm not comfortable with Daniel Jones as my starting quarterback anyway. So that's my biggest problem. And again, like I said, at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones that gets all the blame. They're going to be the ones that get all the glory. And they're the ones that get all the money. That's why I'm hard on them. I personally, and hey, listen, I'm only maybe 40% joking on this one. Maybe 40% joking on this. I think it's a moral duty for Colts fans to critique the quarterback, or for any football fan for that matter, to critique the quarterback far more harshly than they critique any of the other players. Like, you guys are quick to call out the offensive line. You're quick to call out the wide receivers. You're quick to call out the linebackers and the pass rush and the secondary. But you're holding your tongue when it comes to the quarterback. When all those other guys make peanuts compared to the quarterback, when all those other guys touch the football 1% of the time compared to the quarterback, to me, it's a moral duty. You guys say you love these players. You guys say you love them. You're big fans. You follow them. You support them. And Colts fans are some of the nicer fans to their role players, if you will. There's some of the people that actually appreciate, role guys. Colts fans tend to have a lot of fan favorites. Right? Not guys that you see on national media, but guys that Colts fans will always rave about. But when the going gets tough, we see who they call out first. And it's not the quarterback that has spent less than a season in Indianapolis, has no track record of success, yet somehow he's the guy. Automatically. Above all I think I'm saying that word wrong. But above all criticism. I don't even know if those words are interchangeable. I'm on a tear right now. I might be confusing words. I don't care. I don't think that he's above that. He still has to earn the ability for him to have a bad game and for us to get on the airwaves and say, it's just one bad game. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. And that's just the problem that I have with that. And to be honest with you, I mentioned how they make a lot of money. I know Daniel Jones isn't making a lot of money right now, especially for a quarterback. But prior to this game, we were still pretty much considering $35-40 million a year. And I'll get into why that's so crucial for the Colts offseason coming up towards the end of this podcast. But now that I've gotten that talk out of the way, because I just wanted to share my perspective on those things. So when you hear me really bashing a quarterback, you can't just call me a Daniel Jones hater or a Riley Leonard hater or an Anthony Richardson hater. You could just call me a guy that is really hard on quarterbacks, who expects a lot from them and has a very high bar. And if you don't meet the bar, I'm going to say some things. What does it matter if I say some things? I don't know. People listen to me. They like to hear what I have to say. And if you don't, you don't. Don't listen. I don't know. But if you do, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more content for the Colts. I appreciate every one of you guys that has spent your time listening to me and choosing Voice of the Colts as your source for all Colts conversations and narratives and the like. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about the nitty-gritty, dirty time that we had on Sunday in Duval. I don't know if I did that right. Guys, I'm not a Jacksonville fan. Jacksonville fans, if you think I did it wrong, Frank, I don't care. I'm not a Jacksonville fan. I will show you guys some respect, though. The Jacksonville Jaguars, I had said some things about them last podcast. Actually, not really. I said one thing about Trevor Lawrence, which I still sort of stand on. Actually, not sort of. I do stand on. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is that good of a quarterback. I really don't. But he absolutely demolished us. So I have to shut up about it, at least for the next week or so. I have to wait my turn to say bad things about Trevor Lawrence, because right now I can't. He had, what was it, 244 yards, I think it was, 2 touchdowns, didn't turn the ball over once. We had 0 sacks on Trevor Lawrence. He did a fantastic job of extended plays. The Colts could not hit him to save their lives. And he made a lot of good plays. Granted, one of the touchdowns, the one that happened, I want to say it was like right near the end of the half, OPI by a mile. It was a clear as day OPI. We're not in the business of blaming refs. You guys know me. I've said this a million times. I don't blame refs for losses. I can't get behind that. If it was one call and it decided the game, I'll be upset about it and I'll talk about it, but there's a million other ways to win a football game. If it comes down to one call, you didn't do good enough. And I don't think this game came down to one call. Obviously, it was a 36-19 score. But just generally speaking, I don't think it was like that insane. Like, it was a bad missed call, but they scored 3 at the end of the day anyway. So who cares there? Daniel Jones tore his Achilles. And the second quarter, to start the second quarter, I believe, the very early beginning of the second quarter, Daniel Jones tears his Achilles. Was able to walk to the locker room, which doesn't really, everyone said it's a good sign. I mean, he's done for the year. It's absolutely cooked. Daniel Jones' season's over. We're going to get into the future for him as well when we talk about the offseason later on. For now, we're going to focus on the football game. There's no updates on AR, so for the foreseeable future, Riley Leonard's our quarterback. JT, which everyone's run the damn ball crowd, 21 carries, 70 yards, 74 yards, 72 yards. It was a 70 even number kind of yard game, something like that, with a touchdown and a massive fumble that really sucked the air out of Colts fans. It was a rough day, guys. It was a rough day. The run the damn ball crowd. Listen, we had 21 carries. He had one good run. I mean, maybe 1.5 good run. Like, he had one run that went for, I think, 14 yards, was his longest carry of the day. And that was about it. And he had 21 attempts. I don't like talking down about Jonathan Taylor because I think he's a phenomenal running back. I do. I genuinely do. I can't stand the people that have spoken week in and week out after every loss on the Colts and have said Shane Steichen needs to run the ball more. Because what happens is you see games like this where they did run the ball more. They ran 20 times, which is not very often. They've done that this season. 74 yards, 2 possession loss. It didn't work out. And I'm not saying it's Jonathan Taylor's fault, nor am I saying it's Shane Steichen's fault. When you lose your starting quarterback, it's difficult to win games that way and in this manner that we lost. But it's just not that cookie cutter explanation. It's not that simple. Run the ball, win the game. That's not how NFL works. And I think this is a very telling story about that. And I think a lot of the weeks have been a telling story about that. Jonathan Taylor's run more than 20 times. I want to say like 3, maybe 4 times a season. And I think we've won twice in those games. This is the first loss we've ever had with Jonathan Taylor. We've had this season with Jonathan Taylor running for a touchdown. But again, it's just not that simple of a key. And I think that this is a good way for us to, sorry about this, guys, I dropped something. It's just a good explanation, or not explanation. I would say it's a good counter argument for the run the damn ball crowd. It's not that simple. Running the football is not going to be simple. You have to be able to throw the football. And so before I go into Riley Leonard, I watched every single play of every single throw from Riley Leonard over again this morning. Before I get into Riley Leonard, just a quick briefing. The Colts now stand at 3rd in the AFC South, tied with the Texans, who hold the tiebreaker over us. Technically still the 3rd wild card spot. We're clinging on for dear life. The Texans did beat the Chiefs last week. That's why they have the tiebreaker over us still. Not why they have it, but they're tied with us, and they have the tiebreaker over us. We have the toughest remaining schedule in the NFL. This Sunday, we will be traveling to the West Coast to face Seattle in Seattle. That's going to be the toughest game of the year so far. Most likely, maybe, the toughest game of the year. Then we're going to host the Niners. Then we're going to host the Jaguars. And then we finish our season in Houston. Is it possible the Colts go 4-0? Sure. And if you're a gambling person, you could retire today if it happens. or not today, but when the Colts go 4-0, you could retire because it'll pay you $1 quadrillion if they do it, if they win out the rest of the season. It's not very likely to happen. I think it's far more likely we go 0-4 in that stretch. And I think best case scenario, we have to win the Texans and the Jaguars game to have any chance at making the playoffs. So the Colts are in a predicament where we're facing possibly another 8-9 season, possibly not making the playoffs, but it's not all lost. So let's go into the Riley Leonard plays, if you will. How did Riley Leonard do? So Riley Leonard finishes this week off with, he went 18 for 29, 0 touchdowns, 1 pick, 145 yards, had a rushing touchdown, and he only ran the ball 2 times, 5 carries for a touchdown. So I watched every single throw, and a couple of things that I noticed. Number one, decision making, it's going to be tough. Let me explain before I even get into that. Let's just explain the situation. Because as much as, and I do still put the blame on Riley Leonard. He's a rookie quarterback, and so sucks, to have to do this to him, but that's the sport, and that's the position. This loss is on Riley Leonard. A lot of decisions that he made that were pretty poor. There were 4 passes, I would say. 4 passes overall. Mind you, 11 incompletions through 29 times. I found only 4 of those passes to be like, that's a little questionable. Not a little questionable, very questionable. There were some that looked, but whatever. He also had about 5 throws that I saw that were like, whoa, I didn't know he could throw the football. And he threw the football pretty effing well. And we're talking about throwing a guy in that's never started a football game. He's a rookie. We're in a divisional game on the road in a place we haven't won in over 10 years with the division on the line. This is sole possession of the AFC South in a game that you weren't preparing to start for or play for, granted. And he's mentioned that he prepares to play any given week. So, of course, there's that. So you're putting him in a position that's extremely difficult as is. I thought, for what it's worth, he played pretty freaking well. I mean, the interception was a 50-50 ball to Michael Pittman, in which 90% of the time, the refs are going to award the offense the football. And it's as 50-50 as it gets. All the Colts fans that are upset about it going to the Jaguars, I was one of them. It's a little upsetting. I couldn't stay upset. The defender made a fantastic play. It's a judgment call. It's impossible to overturn in that scenario. How do you say definitively that Michael Pittman had more possession there? I don't know. They called it an interception. It's got to stay an interception. And it's not this awful call. It's just kind of weird, tough situation that doesn't happen that often. And they gifted it to the Jaguars. So I'm not going to sit there and grill him for the interception. It wasn't a terrible one. He also had a touchdown taken off the board for what was a very terrible offensive pass interference call. That was an awful call. That's just how it is. This is the sport that we play. Guys get those calls all the time. But can I just tell you guys something? That was an absolute dot. He threw a dot to Michael Pittman in the end zone. He also threw an absolute dot to Alec Pierce in the back of the end zone, in which they called it incomplete, got both feet down, but he doesn't maintain the catch to the ground. So that's on Alec Pierce. That's not on him. We were bailed out with some penalties as well, that extended drives that ended up leading to the Riley Leonard rushing touchdown. There was another play to Alec Pierce. It was like a 20-yard completion that got called back to for an illegal formation. That was another dot. And that was like literally right on the money. Defender was draped all over Alec Pierce. He somehow squeezed it in. That was a phenomenal throw. He had 3 turnover-worthy throws that game. And then he obviously had the safety, which is part of the decision-making that I was talking about, where I was like, yeah, not a good play. You got to get it out sooner. He's trying to make something out of nothing, trying to salvage what we had. We didn't have much. It is what it is. It happens. He's a rookie. That's on him. You can't make those mistakes in the NFL and expect to keep your job. Fortunately for him, there's no one really gunning for his job right now. So he's our starter going into next week against the Seattle Seahawks. Unless, of course, the Colts sign something. This was done, this is being recorded today, Monday. And I'll probably post this after we're done, immediately after recording this. So you guys will have that. So as of now, there hasn't been any announcement that we're going to sign a guy, we're going to train the guys, none of that has been announced. We don't really know. Before I move on, I just want to play you guys. We'll play a few minutes. This is about a 4-minute clip. I'll play maybe a couple minutes of it, of Riley Leonard's media availability. Ugh. Riley Leonard's media availability post Jaguars.
What is the mindset of having to, I mean, it's a job of the backup quarterback, but you got to, like, at a moment's notice, come in a game like that in those conditions. How hard is that?
You know, it's obviously difficult to be put in that situation, but that's something, you know, it's pretty obvious when you're the second-string quarterback that you're one play away. So when that play happens, all right, if you haven't been preparing for that, you know, what have you been doing? So, you know, I always probably, you know, there's a lot of things that you can think about, you know, when you go into a game, but I try to just focus on the little things, focus on my preparation, focus on, you know, preparing like I'm the starter. And Daniel does a great job of helping me do that. You know, whether 2 days ago I'm at his house and we're studying the game plan, quizzing each other on the playbook and the defensive coverages that we can expect. And I really appreciate him, you know, just taking me under his wing. We lived together for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season before I found a place. So he's just been great to me and my preparation that way. You know, when I did go in like today, you know, I wasn't, you know, too much, you know, out there.
I want to stop it right there for a second because I want to mention a couple of things. Number one, I did not know that he lived with Daniel Jones for the first couple weeks of the season until he found his own place. That's pretty cool. There is a closeness there, and obviously he helps him prepare, which I think if you look back at all of the times that Daniel Jones has been praised through the season, every Colts player, every person in the organization has been enamored with this guy's preparation. So to know that at least Riley Leonard is prepping just as hard with him, that gives me a little bit of faith there. As well as, like I said, he played pretty well. I like that. The other thing I noticed about this, can we, honestly, like, dude, Riley Leonard has given us more details in an answer than I think any Colts player in the organization. Like, he actually talks to us. Everyone else has this kind of robotic answer feel to them when they talk to reporters. Riley kind of gets real with them, and I kind of appreciate it. I do appreciate it. I like the way he handles the media here. I know it's not a big deal, but as a quarterback, you're going to have to face the media a lot. You're going to have to speak and be accountable to a lot of things, and I think this is a good start.
Shane mentioned that he could have stayed in the locker room and kind of sold it, but he came back out there and was there for you guys. How much do you respect a guy like that? How do you expect that to be who he is in his nature?
Yeah, I mean, Daniel's the toughest guy that
I don't really care about this one. I mean,
in my life.
He's going to go on to talk about how Daniel Jones is like the toughest guy that he's ever been around, which everyone says. Obviously, played with a broken fibula, plays through pain. He's played through injuries before. He is a tough guy. There is no denying the toughness of Daniel Jones, right? I just don't think it's that important to talk about right now. Let me just skip through this.
What's the emotional difficulty of, you know, going in and making your first big set of plays in the NFL as a rookie quarterback, while also seeing, you know, a guy and a teammate that you're really, really close to going down with a tough injury like that?
Yeah, it's very difficult, but that's the nature of the game. Obviously, you know, your first thought is to pray for Daniel and hope he's great, because
we all do.
It's not how you envision, you know, getting snaps, right? I always envision myself, you know, working and then, you know, developing into a starter that I earned, and, you know, whether I earned it or not is kind of irrelevant. Daniel went down, and my turn.
That's the first red flag I have from this interview. And the only red flag that I have from this interview, to be honest with you, and that's kind of what I wanted to play up to, was that soundbite. I really want my quarterback to have all the confidence in the world. I want him to be like a Shador level swagger to him. You know, I want him, like, I get what he's saying, where he's like, I didn't really earn this, like it was an injury and I came up. I understand where you're coming from, but you earned your spot to be drafted by the Colts. You earned your place on an active roster, and now you earned your ability to come into a football game when the team needed you most. You earned every bit of it. Walk around with that confidence that I earned this. This wasn't given to me. Like, yeah, it happened because a guy went down, but I just want to know that you have the confidence in yourself, that you understand that you are the reason you are on the field today. It was my first red flag. It might not be that big of a deal, but at the end of the day, that's just how I want to see my quarterback have that level of confidence. So that was Riley Leonard, media availability following the Jacksonville Jaguars game. And before we move on to our next topic, I do want to play you guys a soundbite from our last episode as we go over who won the prediction game. Me, Ben, and Jesse, my two guest hosts from last week, made predictions on who would win the Colts football game, and we even made Daniel Jones stat line predictions, which we'll throw out the window because Daniel Jones got injured. So we're going to go ahead and play that clip, and let's find out who was right. Jesse, I want you to give me a score prediction and a quick Daniel Jones stat line, and we'll reference this next week's episode, see how close we are, who won the prediction game for the week.
Who won?
Let's start with you. Go ahead,
Colts
Jesse.
24, Jacksonville 21.
I know it's a little low, guys. Colts 24, Jacksonville 21. That's what his prediction was there.
I think Daniel Jones.
Let's see if we can skip over to Ben.
10 yards.
We don't really need to hear the
30-21 Colts.
30-21 Colts. That was Ben. The first one was Jesse. This is Ben. 30-21 Colts. Let's go on to Reef.
Continue this trend of playing clean game.
Final score prediction is the Jaguars win 27-19. 27-19. I called it sort of close. They ended up winning 36-19. I was off by, 9 points? I was off by 9 points, but, what are you going to do? So, Reef, as the voice of the Colts, wins, and I predicted the Colts losing, which I don't know why I was so excited about winning, but I was right. At least I was right, I didn't have a lot of faith going into this game. I'm not going to lie. And I kind of have less faith going into next week's game, but we won't be predicting that until the end of this show. So we're going to move forward with this. I mentioned earlier that we were going to talk about some possible offseason moves, and it's now no longer too early to talk about it. It's no longer too early to talk about it. We are officially in offseason mode. The Colts have just about 47, according to Over the Cap. Going into the offseason, the Colts will have $47 million of cap space to work with. Now, I am not a financial guy. I'm not a sports finances guy. I don't know how easy it is to manipulate cap figures and backload this or front load this or yada, yada, yada. So I'm just going to give you some general ideas, I guess, of what I want from the Colts to do in the offseason. But before we even get into that, we have to discuss some of the noise around the staffing of the Indianapolis Colts. Because as it stands, the Colts look likely to miss the playoffs. And we've mentioned this in past episodes. I've said it myself. If we miss the playoffs, fire everybody. I don't know if I still feel that way. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to see the Colts fire Chris Ballard. More importantly than anyone else, I don't want to see him fire Chris Ballard. The reason I don't want to see him fire Chris Ballard is I think Chris Ballard has done a phenomenal job building this roster. I think he's done a fantastic job, aside from a few things that I think can cost him his job, and we'll get into those things as well. Shane Steichen, on the other hand, I've championed for him. I love the guy. I think he's a phenomenal play caller, even though that's clearly a hot take amongst all Colts fans. I don't understand where all the hate for play calling comes from. I feel like it's just coming from a place of we have to point the finger somewhere, so that's what we're going to say. Because it doesn't seem to make sense to me. I've heard so many arguments for why his play calling is bad, and none of them have ever made sense. Not a single one has made sense to me. At least to me. I mean, call me crazy, but it just doesn't seem to add up. But of the two guys who may get fired, and they both might get fired, so mind you, I don't know if I'm wrong about this and they both lose their jobs, but if I had to pick between one or the other, I'm picking Chris Ballard. I say we keep Chris Ballard, we fire Shane Steichen. If it comes down to picking one or the other, again, sometimes you just end up losing both. The reason why I say we have to keep Ballard is beyond just my opinion of him, of how good of a job he's done. I want you guys to think about the situation a new general manager would be walking into if they were to take this job starting next season, or starting this offseason. The Colts right now have pretty much an entire roster filled out. You're not getting much of a new roster going into this. So your first year as GM, your fingerprints are nowhere. Whatever happens, happens, and you're going to go into your first draft as a general manager with no first-round picks, right? Your second draft with no first-round picks. And it's going to be at least another full season until you can clear up some cap space, unless you make some pretty damning moves. And I don't know if you have enough to work with to protect your job going forward. Because in the event that the Colts go into the next season and they don't make the playoffs again, and you go into the next season after that, where now you're finally maybe getting some fingerprints, and you don't make the playoffs again, you lose your job within 2-3 years. I don't see it being a very lucrative opportunity unless you agree with what Chris Ballard did and like, well, this roster is actually very, very good and we shouldn't change anything. And in that case, to me, didn't make sense to get rid of Ballard then. He's the one that built that roster. Why get rid of him if the guy you're going to hire is going to look at this roster and say, yeah, it's a very good roster. Let's just keep building around it. That to me doesn't make sense from an organizational standpoint. That to me just looks like we're going in circles. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't see a good enough reason to get rid of Chris Ballard. Not to mention, and I've seen this talk all over Colts Reddit. I've seen it all over the Twitter sphere. I've seen it pretty much all over the internet with Colts fans talking about Chris Ballard and how good or bad of a job he's done with the Colts. And I see people talk about not really hitting in the draft on first rounds, like he's only good in the mid rounds, which is just not necessarily true. He just has had a lot of first round picks to work with. And they say things like, oh, I don't get the idea around the player acquisition. I think I look at GMs like this, twofold, in two spheres, two visions, if you will. The first of which is player acquisition. Who have you brought to this team, and are they good football players? Have they contributed positively to the Indianapolis Colts? And the second thing, which I think is probably slightly more damning, is the staffing. Personally, I like the staff that he's currently has here, and I've liked some of the guys he's brought in the past. But overall, those are the two the two lanes, if you will, that I would judge a general manager by. Everything outside of that is going to fall on the guys beneath him. Like, how many games have you won? How many playoff games have you won? I don't think that's a general manager thing. I think that's an execution thing, and that falls on coaching and the players, the guys that the GM got eventually. So it's technically still attached to the GM, but I just think that you have to look a little bit more at those guys when it comes to the execution on the field, which is the coaching and the players. But I want to go over, and this is going to be a little bit long-winded, but I'm going to go over all of the notable picks, I would say, of Chris Ballard's tenure with the Indianapolis Colts. And after having compiled this list, I thought about it even more, and I said, you know what? Chris Ballard might be one of the best drafters in the NFL right now. I mean, he hits a lot. Now, he's not hitting home runs, but we're hitting plenty of singles, like we're getting contact. We're definitely getting contact on a lot of these swings. He's not hitting and missing a lot. That's my whole thing with GMs. If you're hitting and missing in the draft, that's a very damning quality of a general manager. And I don't think Chris Ballard misses a lot. So, going over the list of draft picks since he's joined the Colts in 2017, starting with first round, pick number 15 out of Ohio State, Malik Hooker. I personally love Malik Hooker. I thought he was a great player. Injuries riddled his season a little bit, and then we ended up getting Julian Blackmon. I believe was it Julian Blackmon that replaced him, or was somebody else? There was somebody else that replaced Malik Hooker that we then replaced with Julian Blackmon. And I'll have to remind myself as I go through these guys probably on this list. Malik Hooker, first round, pick 15. Then in the fourth round, we go and get Marlon Mack, Marlowe, and Big Grove. In fifth round, we get Anthony Walker. That was a fantastic draft to start your tenure with the Indianapolis Colts. You get a really good starter who, again, injury prone. You can't really help that. Didn't play on the field, but he was a fantastic player when he played. Marlon Mack in the fourth round. I absolutely loved Marlon Mack. He was an incredible running back, and I told a funny story last week about how I was upset about picking JT because we had Marlon Mack. That's how much I loved Marlon. Obviously, I feel pretty stupid about that now, but that was just at the time. Got to be honest. That was me at the time. I love Marlowe that much. Big Grove, clearly a home run pick for the Colts, still on the team to this day and still a key component of this defense to this day. Anthony Walker, who I said was a massive mistake letting him walk. I thought it was a massive mistake letting him walk And it is what it is. But that can be a damning thing about Chris Ballard letting him walk as well. But he had the wherewithal to pick him at least, and he had a great time playing with Shaquille Leonard, who gets drafted the following year, which brings me to 2018. Big Q with the 6th pick. So far, I think 1 for 2 on first-round picks, but it wasn't bad scouting on his part with the Malik Hooker pick. It just didn't pan out. Big Q, obviously a home run hit with the 6th pick in the draft. Then in the 2nd pick, you get Shaquille Leonard. It's our 2nd round. You get Shaquille Leonard, obviously home run. Braden Smith, 2nd round. I would say, if not a home run, it's a triple. You know, he's a fantastic right tackle, has been a fantastic right tackle ever since he started for us, and he's been with us since 2018. He's obviously a very, very, very good starting player. If you drafted a guy like Braden Smith in the 2nd round, you'll be very, very happy with him. That was a great hit there. Tyquan Lewis, who was drafted in the 2nd round, hasn't really lived up to 2nd round potential, but has been on the team since 2018 as a cheap rotational guy that has impacted games in a positive manner. Love Tyquan Lewis. Nyheim Hines in the 4th round. Love Nyheim Hines. He was an explosive player for all the years we had him. Obviously couldn't keep him. Contractual obligations. You got to make some tough decisions. That was one of those tough decisions, getting rid of Nyheim Hines. Zaire Franklin, 7th round of that same draft. He's our green dot guy now. He's a team captain. So say what you want to say about Zaire Franklin, but we drafted him in the 7th round of the 2018 draft, and he's now been the starting linebacker for us for the last couple of years. And a green dot guy and a team captain. So you could say what you want about him, but he's clearly been good enough to take that spot and hold that spot. In 2019, we got Rock Ya-Sin in the 2nd round. I think he was a good, not great pick, but again, 2nd round pick, and he's doing a pretty good job in Detroit. I don't think himself is a bust. I think he's a great player. It's just tough to keep guys around when you have a lot of other tough decisions to make. I don't think the Colts got rid of him because he was bad. I think they got rid of him because they couldn't afford to pay him. It wasn't it wasn't worth paying him an extension versus going and finding more talent and paying the other guys that are on the field that you see today. Ben Banagou, they also drafted there, which was a terrible pick. And that's one of the things that you could say about Chris Ballard. Not great picking edge rushers, you know? That's that. Paris Campbell kind of misses on that one, but we had a lot of hope for him. That's an injury thing again. It's unfortunate when it's down to injury. It's not a scouting report thing. It's not he couldn't play in the NFL when he played for us, when he was healthy for us. He was very explosive, very good player. Unfortunate miss, if you want to call it a miss, but it is what it is. Bobby Okereke in the 3rd round of that draft. Bobby Okereke, fantastic player, now playing with the Giants, another guy that we let walk. You can blame him for letting him walk, but if you're looking at the drafting ability of Chris Ballard, that looks pretty good on you. EJ Speed, who's now playing for the Texans team that just whooped us last week, EJ Speed's a really good player. Got picked in the 5th round, was a very good special teams guy, and clearly can now play the linebacker position at a better than he was when he got in the league. At least he's progressed. He's a good player. It's a 5th round pick. Will you expect a all-pro guy in the 5th round? I don't think so. I think it's a good hit for the 5th round. Going into 2020, you get Michael Pittman Jr., 2nd round, best receiver we've had since T.Y. Hilton. You go from Michael Pittman, you get JT in the 2nd round. 2 offensive guys that are top players on this offense today were drafted by Chris Ballard. Both of them, he knocked it out of the park with those guys. Julian Blackmon you get in the 3rd round. There it is. Julian Blackmon was that replacement for Malik Hooker. And he's a fantastic player, but again, injuries, it happens. Total miss in the 4th round with Jacob Eason. And I got absolutely killed by Colts fans when I went to Twitter back in 2020 to talk about how bad of a pick that was in the 4th round. But hey, whatever. Isaiah Rodgers in the 6th round. Isaiah Rodgers is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL now. It's a shame that we had to let him walk, the whole gambling scandal and everything like that. That's tough to see, but phenomenal player. 2021 was Kwity Paye. That was really the only notable pick that he had in that draft, so that's also an L as a draft over there. But still, overall, to this date so far, he's done a great job with the drafts and building this defense and building this team, 2022, he gets Alec Pierce in the 2nd round. We all know how we feel about Alec Pierce. Bernard Raymond in the 3rd round. Bernard's a starting left tackle. Nick Cross in the 3rd round, starting strong safety. And all those guys we think have played very well so far. Andrew Ogletree, who kind of derailed our season in a sense with the injury to Charvarius Ward. Not really his fault, obviously, but that's unfortunate. Caught a touchdown in the Texans game, so good for him. He was picked in the 6th round, so nothing crazy. 2023 was Anthony Richardson, 4th pick of the draft. You could call him a bust. I think it's way too early to say that. So jury's still out on this. Anything at this point on, I think jury's still out on all of those guys. So AR, we haven't seen the last of Anthony Richardson yet. Let's not label him yet, but it is what it is. Josh Downs, who I think is a fantastic wide receiver, he was in the 3rd round. Jalen Jones, who got cooked this week against Jacksonville, I think has shown promise for a 7th round cornerback. So, like, you could call him a bust if you want. I don't know how good you expected a 7th round cornerback to be, but, you know, I think he's a serviceable starter. I think he's not an every down starter yet, and I think he has time to develop, but I like the pick. Moving on to 2024, Leatu Latu, who's our best defensive end on our team right now. He was picked in the 1st round. I think he did a really good job with the Leatu Latu pick. A.D. Mitchell, 2nd round. I think there was a lot of potential with A.D. Mitchell. It's unfortunate. He can't catch to save his life, apparently. We'll call that a miss. Matt Gonsalves, 3rd round. He's a starting offensive lineman for us now. I think he's the right guard. Yeah, because Tanner Bortolini, who we drafted in the 4th round last year, is our starting center. And I think overall, they've done really, really good. And then, of course, this past season, our 1st round pick, Tyler Warren. We've missed on, maybe you can consider one miss in the 1st round for Chris Ballard. Like, it's such a silly argument to make. Acquisitions outside of the draft include guys like DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore, Cameron Bynum, Mooney Ward, Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Pratt, and quarterbacks galore. What more do you want from Chris Ballard, guys? Like, you look at everything he's done to build this roster, and you still say fire him. How much better at acquisition are we going to get? Now, if you think it's Shane Steichen's fault, I think Shane Steichen is far more replaceable and makes far more sense to replace. I brought up John Gruden. I would love John Gruden. There's plenty of guys. There's Mike McCarthy that's going to be available. There are plenty of guys that can be available. And I would tell you what, if you're going to fire both Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, you better get a head coach that's able to do both jobs. Like, I want to see us go for Mike McCarthy in that instance. I would say John Gruden and Mike McCarthy would have to be the guys, in my opinion, if you get rid of both of them. The sky's the limit with coaches. And I think as the season goes on and we get a better picture of what coaches are going to be available and so on and so forth, we'll discuss more about that. And even if Shane Steichen is losing his job, we don't even know if he's losing his job. So I'll talk more about head coaches, possibility of who we get at head coach at a later date. For now, I've dragged this offseason, this Chris Ballard talk on for a very long time. But those are just, I brought it all up, the acquisition, to bring up, like, he's done a really, really good job with the Colts. I don't think we should give up on him. I know the talk is we haven't seen the playoffs in umpteen years or whatever. We haven't won an AFC South title in forever since Andrew Luck. I think Chris Ballard took us to 1 playoff game, maybe 2. So I get it. I understand that when it's not working, you want to blow the whole thing up. I just don't think it's a smart move for us to get rid of Chris Ballard, at least not right now. But we now have to talk about Daniel Jones and his contract, because with this injury, it puts us in a very tough spot. I don't know what the number's going to be anymore. We discussed it being anywhere from $35 to $40 million a year for probably 3-4 years. This Achilles injury is going to take him the entire offseason to get better, to be cleared to play. He may even miss a week or 2 of football. I think the initial reports are saying he should be good week 1. We obviously can't tell the future. We can't tell how his rehab's going to go. The Colts are in this position where we've gotten rid of our 2 first-round picks. You don't have a lot of money going into this offseason. You got about $47 million to work with. But you also have a lot of guys locked up under contract for this next year. So it's not the worst position to be in. And there are guys that you might find that are going to be made available that you can look into. But let's say in a world where we do re-sign Daniel Jones, that number probably has dropped into that $20 million range, most likely, if you are to re-sign him, which then could free up enough space for you to at least get guys like Alec Pierce, and maybe, if Braden Smith is willing to get a discount, maybe Braden Smith. And I think that those 2 are the more important guys to re-sign this offseason. I'm okay with letting Kwity Paye walk. I'm okay with letting Nick Cross walk. I think we'd lose Samson Ebukam. Maybe we re-sign Ebukam. He's a good rotational player, but won't cost too much. The going rate for Alec Pierce projected going rate, guys, is going to be at least $18 million a year. I just want you guys to think about that. $18 million a year when the Colts are looking at a salary cap about $47 million going into a cap space of $47 million going into 2027. Or going into the 2026 season. I'm all over the place here, sorry. But I explored some options. I explored some possible moves. Now, this is prior to the Daniel Jones injury, mind you. So I brought this up with the idea that we're going to re-sign Daniel Jones and he's going to command about $35 million a year. And if we are going to re-sign him, there are about 3 players that I would say you can't be surprised if the Colts shop them in the offseason. All right. Now, one of those players is not going to be Zaire Franklin. Guys, as much as you want Zaire gone, which I don't entirely agree with, but I also don't entirely disagree with, it doesn't do much for us to let him go. I don't know who you plan on bringing in that's only going to cost $5 million a year, that can be a green dot guy, that can command this defense. I know the defense hasn't played exponentially well, but they've done pretty good for the most part of the season. I don't think it's like we got to get rid of the captain of this defense, the guy that's been here 8 years. And if you think about it, I mean, you get rid of Zaire Franklin. I had the number earlier. Let me see if I find it. You save about $5 million. You save yourself about $5 million. Is that really worth cutting Zaire Franklin? And I don't think you trade him and get a lot of value back for him. Is it really worth cutting Zaire Franklin? Can we be for real here? That to me doesn't make any sense at all. So the only thing I could see is maybe you cut Zaire Franklin and you extend Jermaine Pratt. But again, you have to consider the fact that Luan Rumo might be gone. And Jermaine Pratt might not be as good without the defensive coordinator that he's been with for the last, 4 years of his career. I don't know how you feel more confident in Jermaine Pratt leading this defense than Zaire Franklin. That, to me, I don't get it. Zaire Franklin is not the guy on the list that I said we should cut. It doesn't save you enough money. There are people, though, that can. One guy that I feel like Colts fans would be intrigued by. I feel like we as Colts fans should be at least a little intrigued. One guy who I think we're going to be reluctant on, maybe even outright hate the idea, but it's a possibility. And another guy who I think all hell would break loose if it were to happen. Let's start with the guy that I think we'd all be intrigued with. Why don't we start with that guy? Heading into next season, Michael Pittman Jr. is going to command $29 million from the Colts salary cap. Now, if the Colts were to trade Michael Pittman Jr. prior to June 1st, which would be before the draft, which would be ideal, they would then save $24 million in cap savings, giving them extra money to bring in some other players and some other pieces that can help them win now, right? Because essentially that's what you're looking to do regardless, right? You're looking to win now and extend the roster that you have, because this all falls apart after the end of next season and you're going into negotiations to re-sign guys and your team looks extremely different heading into 2027. So I think you have a really, 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 really good roster built right now. If you could get the quarterback play to the level that Daniel Jones played at, which I've mentioned many times, I don't think he's played amazing. I think he's done good enough. Get him to good enough, and maybe you can sustain a whole season where we make the playoffs and make a push for the playoffs. Trading Pittman makes a lot of sense. Trading Pittman opens up $24 million. I even went ahead and got really nerdy with it, and I found some possible trade partners with the Indianapolis Colts for a Michael Pittman Jr. You know what teams I find may be interested in soaking up that contract for a wide receiver one like Michael Pittman Jr., who I think pretty highly of. I don't think he's the greatest wide receiver one in the NFL, but I think very highly of him, and he doesn't cost the greatest wide receiver one NFL money. I think the 49ers may be pretty interested, right? 49ers have the cap space for him, and they can use a wide receiver. And the 49ers, I think, are in a pretty good position where they are not starving for draft lotteries. They have a lot of the pieces that they want and they want to continue to develop. The Colts need draft picks. Now, do I think the Colts get a first rounder for Michael Pittman? If Chris Ballard gets a first rounder from Michael Pittman, he keeps his job. That's the way I put it. If he gets a first rounder from Michael Pittman Jr., then he keeps his job. That's a phenomenal draft. That's a phenomenal move by Chris Ballard. I think regardless, you get second rounds and third, you got a bunch of mid-round picks. Chris Ballard has had infinite success in the mid-round, as I went over earlier. Another team that I feel like could be interested, the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens have a franchise quarterback, similar like the Niners have their franchise quarterback. So the Baltimore Ravens have Lamar. They don't have a clear-cut wide receiver one. Zay Flowers is really good. Hasn't really separated himself from the pack. So there's that. And they have the cap space. So the Ravens are an interesting piece. The Ravens also they have a pretty good draft pick coming up. So maybe if you could snag a first round from them, I don't know if that's going to be feasible. But again, I'm cool with mid-round picks, trading Michael Pittman for some mid-round picks to save some cap space and to make it possible for us to move forward. Another team that actually someone brought up, the Commanders, who have infinite cap space going into next season. I don't see that being feasible, but it's possible you want to overload Jaden Daniels with wide receivers. They could possibly be a team that you look at. And they're projected the 7th pick in the draft. So, hey, if it works, it works, right? Those are just some of the possible landing spots I see for Michael Pittman Jr. going into the offseason. I think we trade him and re-sign Alec Pierce. I think Alec Pierce is him. I think he is him. The way he can high point that football, the separation he creates. I want to see him hold on to the football in that touchdown grab against the Jaguars. That's the next step, make those really, really difficult catches. He's still a young guy. He's a hungry guy, and I like him a lot. So I think Alec Pierce gets extended. We replace Michael Pittman Jr. We clear out $24 million of cap space and re-sign Alec Pierce. And Alec Pierce, I don't think costs as much. I think if we can get him in that $17, $18 million range, it'd be a beautiful season for us. And he'll have a number one spot with that number. So shout out to Alec Pierce. I hope that's how it goes. The second guy who I said will probably be borderline. You guys are probably not going to love hearing this. He's a fan favorite. He's one of my fan favorites too. As a fan, I love this guy to death. Big Grove. I talk a big game about Big Grove. He would save you about $12 million if you were to move on from Grover Stewart and trade him. And let me tell you something. Grover Stewart was in talks to be traded for a guy like Trey Hendrickson. So if you don't think there's a lot of value in Grover Stewart, I'd say you're probably mistaken. I would argue you're probably mistaken. Grover Stewart's a guy that could save you about $12 million in cap space if you trade him before June 1st. I don't know how much you get back for him. I do know that the Colts need to get draft capital. They need it bad. They need it fast. They need it now. And this is what we're going to need to do to fill out this roster and continue to develop players so we can allow some of those bigger contracts in the later years to walk. Bring the younger guys in who are now developed over the last year and can do something for us. Because we're in a hellhole where we don't have a quarterback. We don't have a way to get a quarterback, so we have to create a way to get a quarterback. I think if you get Michael Pittman makes the most sense. Again, I said at the beginning, I think we'll be most intrigued by it, and I think it makes the most sense is Michael Pittman Jr. Grover Stewart just gives you enough cap space to work other avenues. And the last one, which I think is unrealistic, I think is scary to think about, I think we've seen it happen before, is trading Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor would save you guys $13 million. It would save us $13 million. He would bring back the most value for a trade, in my opinion. You get the best running back in football. Pretty easy sell. I didn't really want to look into trade targets because I feel like, why would I? Why would I subject myself to this? We've seen the Giants make this decision with Quan. where they allowed Quan to be moved and they signed Daniel Jones instead. Lo and behold, the Colts have Daniel Jones with an extension to be talked about, and they have Jonathan Taylor eating up what would eat up about $13 million if he stays, $13 extra million if he stays on the team. It's tough decisions to make. I don't think you go with the last two. Again, they are players whose names you have to be aware of because of the amount of cap space that they have. And if you want to make a drastic move, you're going to have to free up cap space. Unless you go into the season with Riley Leonard and Anthony Richardson. That's your option if you want to keep all three of those guys. That's your option. I don't know who that quarterback is going to be, and we'll get into this going forward. There's been names thrown out like Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, I find to be an interesting name. Not in the sense that I think Kyler Murray is going to revive his season, because I personally don't like Kyler Murray as a quarterback. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. I haven't seen anything that makes me feel franchise quarterback-ish about Kyler Murray. But we have seen a high ceiling from him, explosive plays from him, and I do think he could bring a healthy amount of competition to the quarterback room that is worth entertaining. Because what other options do you have besides paying Daniel Jones with one Achilles, or having Anthony Richardson trot out there and quitting on us in the middle of a game, or Riley Leonard, who shows a little bit of promise but otherwise very lackluster at quarterback? I don't know where we go from there. So forgive me for bringing up some of the worst possibilities of the offseason, but it's possibilities. And I think that we should be aware that that's what it looks like. Now, I wasn't prepared enough for this episode to talk about all of the quarterback options. So I think I'm going to end this by talking a little bit about our upcoming game against Seattle, probably just making a prediction. And we do have some breaking news. We do have some breaking news coming from Twitter that I got alerted earlier in the show that I'm going to bring up. But I think next week I'll have a more fully thought out list of quarterback options. And we'll go on and continue our having fun of our fantasy offseason moves and what offseason moves we might find throughout the year. That's gonna be a few later episodes. So we'll do all of that. Going into Sunday, the Colts will be playing the Seattle Seahawks. And the breaking news is that for the third time in this NFL season, Charvarius Mooney Ward is on the concussion protocol. This will all but take him out for the rest of the season, I feel like. I think the vibes from the Colts are this season is over anyway. I don't know if that probably shouldn't be how they feel, and if that's how they feel, we have some serious character issues in that locker room. I don't think that's the case. But I feel like this is a good enough reason to sideline him for the rest of the season. It's his third stint in the concussion protocol. The second one was the scariest of them all. He played pretty much the entire game, so I don't know what happened to bring him in the concussion protocol, which gives me a little bit of faith, but that could be a problem. When you're talking about going into a game against the Seattle Seahawks, who have one of the best passing offenses in the NFL, and you're probably not going to have Sauce Gardner, and you're probably not going to have Charvarius Ward. Yeah, that's a problem. That means Mekhi Blackmon and Jalen Jones are your 1 and 2 corners. Again, we've seen how that's gone. We didn't like how that went. And we're here for a very miserable time playing against Jackson Smith and Jigba. And Cooper Kupp and everyone else that they have on that team, because it's going to be a field day. I don't see the Colts winning this football game. I don't see a world where we win this game. I hope we do. I'll be rooting for them all the way. You guys know how I am. I'm always going to root for the Colts. I'm always going to pick them in my Pick'ems league that I have with my family. We've been going on for forever, what it feels like. I don't know how many years. We have a Pick'ems league that we pick the games every single season, and I always pick the Colts to win every single week. I predicted the Colts to lose last week on the podcast. It's going to be the same thing that happens here. I think the Colts lose. We're looking at I think it's going to be another blowout. I say 37-13 is the possible score that we're looking at. So my official prediction is Colts lose 37-13 in Seattle. I'll go Riley Leonard stat line for you guys. Riley Leonard stat line in a 37-13 loss is going to be 15 completions for 31 attempts. So 15 for 31. We'll say he gets 165 yards, and we'll say he throws 1 touchdown and maybe runs for another one, and we just go for 2 and miss it. That's how we end up with 13. And I think he throws at least 2 interceptions. So that's my official prediction for the Seattle Seahawks and the Indianapolis Colts next week. Whatever you predict, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. And if you get close enough, because you weren't really on this show, so it's not an official prediction for this show, but if you get close enough, I promise you, I will feature you on this episode. And if you want to join me for the next episode of the Voice of the Colts podcast, or any future episodes of the Voice of the Colts podcast, join the Discord link. It's in the description. And also, tell all your friends. I appreciate you guys all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share with all your friends. Tell your mama, tell your daddy. I love you guys all, man. And I will see you guys next week. Unless there's some emergency news. That's also some news I want to tell you guys about the podcast. I am no longer doing a completely regularly scheduled program. I will be doing episodes every Monday after a Colts football game. I may be doing extra pop-up episodes throughout the week. I was planning on doing one earlier this week. Life got in the way, so I didn't have one this week, but be on the lookout. A lot of the times, you may see a pop-up episode of the Voice of the Colts podcast. And again, if you guys want to be on an episode, you have to join the Discord. I announce it every time I go live, and every time I record, I'll be announcing it in the Discord. But until next week, I love you all. Thanks for tuning in, and go Colts. Peace.